Fernando Mendoza is being projected as a potential #1 overall NFL draft pick.
Mel Kiper Jr.'s first mock draft of the draft season is officially hot off the presses. And no surprise, he has Fernando Mendoza going #1 overall to the Raiders as you take a look at the top 10 picks.
A 2-star recruit from Florida who barely got noticed by power conference schools is now leading an undefeated Indiana team and generating legitimate Heisman buzz.
I mean, this kid cracked the code like you always talked about. He was spectacular throughout the season. He cut the sack total at Cal from 41 down to 18 during the regular season. He improved in the areas he needed to. 35 starts he benefited from, experience being the best teacher.
How does that happen? How does someone go from accepting a scholarship offer to Cal, essentially out of desperation, to becoming one of the most talked about quarterbacks in college football?
Mendoza ready to take the snap. He takes it, he looks, and he runs it.
No, he runs it. And he ties for the end zone. Does he get it in? Touchdown! Fernando Mendoza runs the football and scores. 12-yard play. Fernando Mendoza, tremendous fake, and then he runs it in.
Well, that yikes worked. Yikes.
The answer involves rejection, family, and a very specific path most people never saw coming. Mendoza grew up in South Miami, just 5 miles from the University of Miami. His parents were athletes. Mom played tennis at Cornell, Dad rode crew at Brown. They wanted him in sports early. Fernando joined a youth team called the South Miami Gray Ghosts, but quarterback wasn't his choice initially. His mom pushed him toward the position, thinking it would keep him safer from the big collisions happening everywhere else on the field. Then he watched Tom Brady in the 2011 Super Bowl. Something clicked. The control Brady had over everything happening around him, the way he commanded the entire offense, the intelligence required to execute at that level. Fernando decided that's what he wanted to do, be the one calling the shots, dictating the tempo, making everyone around him better. He ended up at Columbus High School, which has a solid football tradition. Brian Grease came from there. So did a handful of other Division I quarterbacks.
With such a great football program like Christopher Columbus football is, it's not only helped me become a better person, but it's also helped me become a great football player with the coaching that Coach Dunn and all the coaches over there has provided.
Fernando figured he'd follow that same route, maybe land at a big program, live out the dream. Except the dream had other plans, or really, the recruiting process had other plans. Miami was the school he wanted, grew up watching them, lived in their backyard. His dad even knew Mario Cristobal from way back. Fernando went to a Hurricanes camp during his senior year, hoping to impress the coaches, show them what he could do. When he asked about their interest level, they told him they might take him as a walk-on. Might, not guaranteed, just a possibility if everything else fell through for them. That response lit something inside him. Not anger exactly, but determination. He realized he wasn't getting the hometown opportunity he'd imagined, so he had to find another way. The recruiting process didn't get much easier from there. Georgia Tech showed some interest. Louisville looked at him. Maryland watched his film. But as things progressed, the Power 5 offers never materialized. Most of what came in were FCS programs and Ivy League schools. Fernando committed to Yale at one point, figuring an Ivy education combined with football was a solid backup plan.
Unbelievable that the high school scholar quarterback barely had any offers to play college ball and was headed to Yale.
Then Cal entered the picture. Late in the 2022 recruiting cycle, their offensive coordinator Bill Musgrave started digging through film and found Fernando. At 6'6" with decent arm talent, the physical tools were obvious. Musgrave convinced the staff to take a chance. They offered him a scholarship, the only Power 5 program willing to do so. Fernando had already signed with Yale, but since Ivy League schools don't give athletic scholarships, he could back out without penalty. He did exactly that. Berkeley became the destination, 3,000 miles from home. Completely different culture, no real expectations. Fernando arrived as a project, someone who might develop into something useful by his junior or senior year, if everything broke right. Nobody expected immediate impact. The 2022 season came and went without Fernando taking a single snap. He watched, learned the system, got stronger, waited for his opportunity. That opportunity arrived in 2023 when injuries created openings on the depth chart. Sam Jackson was supposed to be the guy, but he got hurt. Fernando got thrown into real game action during the final 7 weeks of the season. His first major test came against 15th-ranked Oregon State. He threw for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns.
He escapes. Mendoza flips. Afonso has the touchdown.
Then he did it again against Utah and again against USC. The results were mixed. Cal lost his first 4 starts, but the flashes were undeniable. Fernando finished that season with 1,700 yards, 14 touchdown passes, and 10 interceptions. Not spectacular, but enough to earn Pac-12 Freshman of the Year recognition, enough to prove he belonged. More importantly, enough to suggest he could become something much bigger than anyone initially thought possible. The 2024 season heading into his junior year brought competition for the starting job. Chandler Rogers transferred in from North Texas with solid experience, and many assumed there'd be a genuine battle through fall camp. That lasted about 2 weeks. Fernando opened against UC Davis with a modest performance, 158 yards and a touchdown.
Mendoza the handoff. Jaden on. He's in. Touchdown, California. This one will stand.
Nothing spectacular, but clean. Week 2 changed everything. Auburn on the road, hostile SEC environment. Exactly the kind of test that reveals whether a quarterback belongs in bigger conversations. Fernando walked into Jordan-Hare Stadium and dismantled the Tigers. 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
And they're going to fake it to him and go over the top. It is caught! Touchdown! Isaiah Hunter, the freshman wide receiver.
He completed 17 of his first 18 passes before a minor injury forced him to the sideline briefly. Cal won 21-14, and the competition for the starting job evaporated completely. Then came the Miami game. College game day showed up in Berkeley for the first time in years. Number 8, Hurricanes visiting, Fernando facing the program that told him he might be good enough to walk on. He insisted there was no bad blood, refused to make it personal, respected what Miami represented. The game itself turned into a heartbreaker. Cal jumped out early, looked capable of pulling the upset, then watched it slip away on controversial late calls. Final score 39-38 Miami. Fernando only completed 11 passes that afternoon, his lowest total of the season. Cal proceeded to lose close games to Pittsburgh and NC State, but Fernando closed the year with 3 explosive performances. 364 yards against Oregon State, 385 against Wake Forest, 299 against Stanford with 3 touchdowns. He finished 2024 with over 3,000 passing yards, 16 touchdowns through the air, 6 interceptions, and 2 more scores on the ground. Those numbers came despite playing behind a struggling offensive line, operating within a system that didn't maximize his talents, and throwing to receivers who weren't separating consistently. When Fernando entered the transfer portal, speculation ran wild. Georgia seemed possible. Miami made sense narratively. Several major programs showed interest, but anyone paying attention saw Indiana coming from miles away. His younger brother Alberto had committed to James Madison initially, then followed Curt Cignetti to Bloomington when the coach made that move. Alberto never wavered, never entered the portal himself. Family connection plus Cignetti's track record of quarterback development made Indiana the obvious landing spot. Cignetti had just turned Curtis Rourke into one of the most efficient quarterbacks in football and a legitimate draft prospect despite minimal recruiting hype coming out of high school. Fernando saw the blueprint. The move to Bloomington brought instant expectations. Over 4,700 career passing yards, 34 total touchdowns across 2 seasons at Cal, recognition as a top 5 transfer portal quarterback. He finished second in the ACC in completion percentage his final year, top 10 in multiple major statistical categories. Draft analysts split sharply on his projection. Some mocked him as a first-round selection based purely on physical tools and production trajectory. Others questioned whether the numbers were real or inflated by weaker competition. Indiana's 2025 opener against Old Dominion didn't settle anything. 18 completions on 31 attempts, 0 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing score. Solid win. Nothing memorable. Week 2 against Kennesaw State showed flashes. 245 yards, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers. Then Indiana State got obliterated 73-0 with Fernando throwing 6 scores while completing 95% of his attempts. The Illinois game mattered most. Top 10 Illini coming to Bloomington, legitimate test against quality competition. Fernando shredded them.
Mendoza looks, steps into one, end zone, touchdown! E.J. Williams goes up high.
21 of 23 passing, 267 yards, 5 total touchdowns in a 63-10 demolition. Through 4 games, he still hadn't thrown an interception. That changed at Iowa. Road environment, defensive intensity, first real adversity of the season. Fernando threw his first pick, but responded by leading a game-winning drive late, hitting Elijah Surratt for the go-ahead score.
A run, and there he goes. Elijah Surratt, touchdown Indiana.
Indiana won 20-13. Fernando's decision to run back into the end zone for a safety rather than sliding became a bizarre footnote that annoyed gamblers everywhere. 5 games into the season, Fernando Mendoza sat at 1,200 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Indiana was undefeated, and the conversation had already shifted. This was no longer about whether they were a playoff team. It was about whether they were the best team in the country. Oregon was supposed to be the wall. Instead, it became the statement. On a national stage against one of the most talented rosters in college football, Mendoza delivered one of the defining performances of his career.
There's the pressure. Throws to the corner. Touchdown, Surratt.
Tight window throws, complete command at the line of scrimmage, no panic under pressure. Indiana walked away with the win, and suddenly the Heisman conversation wasn't hype, it was real. Then came the college football playoff. Indiana didn't sneak through. They dominated. A statement win over Alabama, another composed performance under the brightest lights.
Here it comes. Mendoza has time. Lows end zone. Caught! Touchdown, Becker!
Every round erased another doubt about whether Mendoza's production was system-driven or inflated. It wasn't. It translated against elite defenses. And then the story came full circle. January 20th, 2026, college football playoff national championship game, Indiana versus Miami. The program is 5 miles from his childhood home. The program that once told him maybe. There was no revenge speech, no dramatic headlines from him, just execution. Mendoza was calm, efficient, ruthless when it mattered most.
Again, huge cushion, and Becker makes a catch, fights down near the pylon, touchdown Indiana!
On a pivotal 4th down near the goal line, he kept the ball and powered into the end zone for a touchdown that shifted the momentum of the game.
Weaves his way first and goal, diving toward the end zone, touchdown!
When the final whistle blew, Indiana had defeated Miami 27-21, 16 wins, 0 losses. For the first time in school history, Indiana was national champion. Weeks earlier, Mendoza had already stood in New York City and heard his name announced as the 2025 Heisman Trophy winner. The 2-star recruit who nearly played Ivy League football had officially become the best player in college football. Now he had a championship ring to match it. 2-star recruit, 1 Power 5 offer, bench year, close losses, transfer, breakout, playoff run, national champion, Heisman winner. The trajectory doesn't just make sense now, it makes history. And with his declaration for the 2026 NFL Draft, the final chapter of his college career shifts into a new question. Not whether he can win, he already did that. Not whether he can perform under pressure, he proved that on the biggest stage possible. The only remaining question is how high he will go. From maybe a walk-on, to undefeated national champion, to Heisman Trophy winner, to potential #1 overall draft pick. The kid Miami didn't want didn't just prove he belonged, he built a legacy.